Across the Spiderverse was one of the best animated movies of the past 2 decades, and truly was a soon-to-be all-time classic Spider-Man movie. Aside from being a good film though, Across the Spiderverse also succeeds at being a perfect sequel to its predecessor, and today I'm going to be looking at why that is the case. Once again, I will be breaking my analysis down into 3 distinct categories: continual development, the step up, and growing with the audience. Before we get into all the fun stuff though, I would like to ask you to consider leaving a like and subscribing if you enjoyed the video, and feel free to comment who your favorite Spider-Man is and why. Also, if you were one of the people who wanted to see the Miles Morales character study instead of this video, well, I'm just gonna play this random clip with absolutely no relevance to what I said before it.
I can do both.
Okay, so to start off this first category, I want to really quickly establish why it is so crucial for any good sequel. Believe it or not, it is possible for a movie to be a good movie, but a bad sequel at the same time. And perhaps one of the clearest examples of this is The Incredibles 2. On its own, the movie is perfectly fine. Not as good as the first, but definitely not bad either. However, it was a bad sequel, and the main reason for that was because it did not progress or build off of the characters from the first movie, but rather regressed several characters' development, such as Bob reverting back to wanting to be a hero and not being satisfied with living a normal life for his children, or Helen criticizing Bob for neglecting his parental responsibilities in the first movie, only for her to go ahead and literally do the exact same thing she told him not to do in the second movie, or the Underminer saying he was going to take over the world in the first movie, and then in the second movie he just robbed the bank and dipped. Yeah. That's a clear example of how to not build off your predecessor. You see, the whole point of a sequel is to continue to build the world of the film, develop pre-established characters, introduce new ones, and explore new settings. That is why continual development is so important to a second movie. It quite literally is the goal of a sequel. What can separate a good movie but bad sequel from a good movie and a good sequel? Now that we understand why continual development is so important, let's look at how Across the Spider-Verse applies this principle. Our previously established characters receive much more development in this movie. Development linked to character traits and flaws from the previous film. And Into the Spider-Verse, we establish that Gwen couldn't save her best friend, and how that incident blocked her from ever making any other friends again. And Across the Spider-Verse, we revisit this incident, but now get a much closer look at not only how it affects Gwen, but also her relationship with her father. The first movie showed us how Peter was scared of having kids with Mary Jane, and that ultimately led up to their divorce and his depression. In the end of that film, Miles tells him that the road to redemption is a leap of faith, and Peter acknowledges. Now in Across the Spider-Verse, we see how Peter accepting that advice has affected his character. He has conquered his fear of parenthood, reunited with Mary Jane, and consequently is much happier than he was before. Another example of this continual development between the two movies is Miles' relationship and struggles with his parents. In the first film, his parents are worried about him due to him being gone from school and home because of the events of the first movie. As Miles continues to be Spider-Man, this issue continues to get worse, with him having to constantly lie to them about his whereabouts, and the progression of this problem is portrayed more prominently in Across the Spider-Verse. Even subtle things, such as Miles being able to consistently turn invisible on command and learning new techniques with his Venom Strike, shows his growth from the first film, where he was just figuring out how to control those new powers. All of these examples and more show that the creators behind this film clearly remembered what happened in the first movie and crafted a quality story based off of that, taking the time to make sure the payoff setups from the previous films in order to show character growth. Additionally, just like a good sequel should, the film also introduces tons of new characters and settings to the audience, expanding the world of the movie. The way that the characters we know retain their growth from the last movie, and then build upon that growth in Across the Spider-Verse, as well as the way the movie expands the universe of the film with new elements, are both great examples of how to do continual development right, which makes for not only a good movie, but also an amazing sequel. So in case any of you are confused confused by what I mean with this category, allow me to explain what it is and why it is important to a sequel. A sequel is the progression of a franchise, and that progression can either be forward or backwards. In other words, the sequel will move the franchise somewhere new from where the original left it off, with the goal being to progress it forward. And one of the main ways of doing this is by having the sequel do everything bigger than the first movie, or as I like to call it, the step up. Now that we understand this principle, let's look at how it is applied to Across the Spider-Verse. Starting with the look of the film, the success of Into the Spider-Verse already began to bring 2D 3D hybrid animation into the mainstream. And as revolutionary as that film's animation style was, Across the Spider-Verse steps it up by taking the stylized visuals of the movie and cranking it from 3 to 10, trying to maximize its storytelling potential with its unique visuals. The film doubles down on trippy and metaphorical animation, the blending of different animation styles, the editing is faster and more experimental, and overall, the animation is just a step up from its predecessor. Next, if we look at the story, the stakes are all higher, with the entire multiverse at stake this time, not just Miles' city of Brooklyn. The threats, such as Miguel O'Hara and the Spot, are much more powerful and dangerous, and the scale of all the action scenes is so much bigger than it was before. The entire movie takes what the original presented and then steps everything up so that this story feels even bigger than the previous one. And that is exactly the job of a good sequel, to give the audience something even more grand than what they saw the first time, to save your best for last and end on a high note rather than starting out strong and then finishing weakly. This final category, growing with the audience, is not something that is technically necessary for a sequel, but following this principle, especially in media made for ever-growing adolescents, can prove to be an effective way to engage your existing fanbase and capture the attention of a new demographic. If we want to take a look at a good example of a movie franchise that did this well, we can look at the How to Train Your Dragon series. Each film progressively got more mature in tone and themes in order to stay relevant with the kids who grew up watching these movies. In much the same way, Spider-Verse also grows with its audience. Into the Spider-Verse focused on Miles as he was just beginning to attend high school. Young teens who were about to enter their high school journey could relate to Miles as he adapted to his new environment and learned how to define what kind of Spider-Man he was going to be, as they also needed to adjust to their new environments and begin to define what kind of people they were going to be. Across the Spider-Verse starts out with Miles getting the swing of high school and being Spider-Man, but he is now faced with the new challenge of starting to begin his college journey and having to refine what kind of Spider-Man he has chosen to be, even in the midst of adversity. Quite a few years have passed since the first Spider-Verse movie came out, and at this point, the young high schoolers who related to the issues from the first film are older now and have new problems to face. Problems such as college, or slowly refining and reinforcing what kind of person they have decided to be. Just like the main character Miles has grown up, and so is facing new problems in this stage of life, so too the adolescents who enjoyed Into the Spider-Verse have also grown up and are also in a similar stage of life, facing similar problems. And it's not just with the main character, the whole movie has much more of a mature tone than the first. So much so that some of the people I know who watched the movie thought that it was PG-13. It deals with heavier and more mature material because more of its original audience relates to that sort of tone now, and will better appreciate it than a movie that they would have tonally enjoyed if they were 5 years younger. In growing with the audience, Across the Spider-Verse stays relevant to the main target demographic of the first movie, which is exactly what a good sequel should strive to do. As we have seen, it is possible to make a good movie, but a bad sequel. However, Across the Spider-Verse avoids falling into that trap by cleverly emphasizing development in characters, settings, tone, events from the first movie, and so much more. The people behind Into the Spider-Verse clearly had a vision for their story, and they did a perfect job of building off of what they had already set up in the first movie. One of the coolest parts of this amazing sequel is the villain The Spot, and if you want to learn more about him and why his twist of turning into a multi-interdimensional threat was so effective, then check out my character study on him in the character study playlist on my channel, or you can click the link in the description. If you enjoyed my video, then please show it some support, subscribe, and don't forget to comment below who your favorite Spider-Man is. And I'll catch you all on the next one. Have a great day.